movies and TV shows and books and magazines and all of these things can be a lot of things. It's not very often that they're supportive, but at the very least, they provide very good examples of sometimes pretty extreme versions of the patterns that we tend to live in our lives, the patterns that we see in ourselves and in each other. And I think a pattern that's very, very common and can take on many forms is self-sabotage, specifically when it comes to that point of believing in yourself, of feeling like you can change and having the support of the people in your life around you when you're trying to change a pattern or a habit or something that you know is not best. You want to change it, but every time someone says to you, you'll never change, or oh, wow, you actually did it, wow, or says something in a way that implies that they just expect you to go back to whatever old habit you were into. Giving up smoking is something that's very, it's one of those things where, you know, if you suddenly stop smoking when you're visiting your friends or family, everyone's like, oh, where's your cigarette? Why aren't you smoking? And then they tend to make a big deal out of it. And then they talk about how they were never able to quit, or how all of these reasons why you won't actually ever be able to quit. And it becomes quite disheartening when the people around you are so pessimistic about your ability to change. And it's our tendency to take it personally, to internalize their responses and to use that as fuel to flame the fire of, this is why I'm never going to change. This is why I'm always going to be this way, always going to do this thing, never going to be able to stop this addiction. No one believes in me. Why should I believe in myself? And it's this vicious cycle that keeps going over and over. So if you're in a position where you want to change something, it's something that maybe has affected a lot of people in your life, it's something that maybe has hurt people in your life, or it's a bad habit that you know you need to stop, but you just don't know if you can. These are ways that I've support myself through changing things that were apparently this huge part of me, and also stopping addiction. So maybe not everyone will know, but I used to smoke. I smoked a pack a day for almost 10 years. I stopped smoking about the time when I started studying for my degree. And my reasons for stopping were not really different to the previous attempts that I had made. You know, they're always kind of the same reasons for wanting to stop. But the difference between the times before when I tried to stop but didn't, or it didn't stick, and this last time that I did stop for good, which is now, it's been, sure, 7 or 8 years that I haven't been smoking. So it's not about the reasons. It was about my commitment to making the choice. It was about not giving myself any back doors, because every time I had that thought of how difficult it was to stop, or how much I wanted to have a cigarette, or whatever other reasons I had for going and picking up a cigarette and smoking it, every time I allowed myself to participate in those little thoughts, in those little reasons, I made it more difficult for myself. It became easier to talk myself out of stopping. But I think also it was like, the best way I can describe it is like I closed all of those doors for myself. I closed any possibility of me slipping back. It was such an absolute choice that I had made, that failure was just not an option, because I knew that the only way that I would fail is if I made the choice to pick up a cigarette. In that, I recognized my personal power within that position I was in. It was entirely up to me and my choices. And I'm not saying it wasn't difficult. The first few days were really difficult. The first few weeks were really difficult. The first year was a challenge. But after that, I was thinking about it less and less. And I was also quite strict with myself about having substitutes for the addiction. So a lot of people will try and take nicotine patches or have sweets or lollipops or something that they can kind of fiddle with while they're going through the worst of it. I didn't let myself go there because for me, it was too small a gap between that and just picking up a cigarette again. Like, it was too close to the line for me. Maybe it works for other people, but this is what worked for me. And now that I'm describing what I went through, it kind of seems like, how is this going to be helpful to anyone to just be committed to making a choice? But, the bottom line is that's literally all it was. It was just do it. Just don't do the thing that you don't want to do. And don't listen to all the reasons why you should do the thing that you're trying to stop. I mean, it's as simple as that, but in practice, it's very challenging because you have the cravings, you have the habit, the physical habit. It's like it becomes a physical, like an automated routine that your body is just trying to do the whole time, and you're saying to yourself, no, stop. It does get easier over time. It does. I didn't let myself say, oh, it's been 6 months, let me just have one cigarette now and, it'll be fine. I didn't even let myself go there. And yeah, I mean, here we are, 7 or whatever years later. And not that I haven't thought about it, I've had some pretty tough moments where I was like, having a cigarette right now would just be so nice. It would just make me feel so much better. But it didn't. So otherwise, might not be able to say the same things I'm saying right now. And then the second example I'll give is of a particular personal habit that I changed, that was apparently a really big part of me, but I managed to eventually change that. And I think when it comes to personal emotional patterns, emotional responses, and habits that are more ingrained into our behavior rather than a physical dependency like an addiction on a substance, it's more important to identify the triggers, because it's not so obvious when you do it. It's not like you're consciously picking up a cigarette and smoking the cigarette. Sometimes the thoughts just kind of come up and the responses just come up and the emotions just come up, and it feels like it comes out of nowhere. And it's sometimes you don't realize that you're in it until it's too late and you've really tumbled down the rabbit hole, and it's hard to get back out again. So for me, what's very important is to identify the specific triggers. So situations, people, thoughts, events, environments, all the things that make it more likely for me to go into that response that I'm trying to change. So let's take anger, for example. Anger is something that I used to spend a lot of time in. Now, not so much. And when I go there, it's a little bit different to how it used to be, where before it was mostly like lashing out and at the things around me. And now it's more of I try to use it more as a driving force to, when I see something terrible on the internet, and I use that anger as like a reminder and a fuel and a reminder to keep pushing. So anyway, back to what I was saying. So for me, anger would be triggered by thoughts of blame. It would be triggered by thoughts of judgment, judging other people. It would be if people didn't do what I told them to do or asked them to do, or we discussed something and they didn't do the thing as we discussed it. So situations like that, didn't have to be really big stuff. It was sometimes just menial stuff that would come up, but I would get so angry I'd lash out. And I had to identify, okay, how do I help myself to recognize that I've gone into that anger, that state, rather than letting it just continue because I haven't noticed that I'm in it yet. So I had to identify what are the thoughts that I have when I'm angry that I need to watch out for. How can I help myself to be aware more of the time so that I can identify earlier when I'm in an emotional state that I don't actually want to be in. And also I had to give myself a correction, a different way to respond to a situation that I usually would get angry about. So if I felt the anger coming up, or if I saw one of those thoughts trigger, or if I was in a particular situation that was kind of like high risk, I had a thing that I would do to help myself. So I'd breathe slowly and deeply. I'd ground myself in my body. I'd ask myself questions. This is something that I use quite a lot in a lot of different situations. Is I ask myself questions of, am I right? What if their point is valid? What if I haven't considered everything? Obviously depending on the context, but I ask myself questions to force myself to see a different perspective, to see a different point of view, to stand in someone else's shoes. And usually that's enough for me to not even want to be angry about it anymore, because I'm not so tied into my self-righteous, flaming sword of glory, anger kind of state anymore. And over time, just practicing that, and I had, obviously with these things, it has to be consistent. It has to be every time. Or when I noticed that I'd slipped up and I hadn't caught the anger early enough and I'd let it turn into a lashing out, then I had to look at, okay, how did that happen? Why did I slip up there? Why did I lose that moment? Why did where was my awareness? Why did I miss that moment? And look at, okay, that's what happened. This is how I can help myself next time something similar happens. Okay, I'm going to round that off here because this is already a very long video, maybe making up for the very scarce videos in the last 2 weeks or so. But if you have a particular point that you're struggling with, an addiction or a habit or a pattern you've been wanting to change, you've been struggling, talk about it. Write a comment, send me a private message. I can always do an anonymous video for you where no one will know that it's you that I'm talking about, for example. Or if you want to write a comment, let's start a discussion. Let's build a better platform for supporting each other, because we're not alone in this. The interesting thing, the more I learn about human nature, the more I see how similar we all are and how similar our experiences are. So you're not alone. If you want to reach out, I'm here. Thanks for watching. You're going to see me next time.